And all of a sudden, when I took a step back, I noticed myself talking to my siblings more, making plans with my friends, being expressive and outgoing, more driven and ambitious, always having an ear open to others and a hand out to help, being curious about the most mundane things and ultimately seeing the world through a new lens. Little did I know how much of this persona was dependent on another person. Little did I know until it was all taken away and I was left with myself. I'm of course talking about what commonly happens when people get into their first loving relationship or some of the changes that occur. If you've ever been heartbroken or experienced a relationship which changed how you look at things in life, you may relate to this. But I want to speak about this dynamic and why these kinds of relationships are a blessing, whether they worked out or not. I think we all have things we want to change or pursue in our lives. For me, before I got into my first relationship, it was better grades, more physically fit, and being a little more outgoing and ambitious with the relationships in my life. And so when I got into my first relationship during this stage, right, this growth and development stage, it's like there was an energy or a new fuel which kind of pushed me in a direction I wanted to go. Where I was once a little more reserved and nervous, I now had a personal witness to my life who saw everything and almost affirmed my existence. And although everyone's relationship may be different, if you're a person who goes from struggling with intimacy to now being offered it daily and participating in love every waking hour, you may be even more sensitive to change, as the initial depravity or lack of intimacy makes the love seem all the much better. Right? It's kind of like the longer you delay a craving for a cake or some sweet treat, the better it tastes when it finally comes. That's all to say that while my practical day-to-day didn't change much, this girl made me feel great about myself. And although that's the selfish part, I believe it's true in most scenarios. From my perspective, everything was great. And couple this with the honeymoon stage of relationships and the exciting time I was in, just about to graduate high school, it was almost like everything fell into place. But is it okay for someone to change this much because of a relationship? When does growth in this way become dependency that may in turn ruin things down the line? You see, my girlfriend at the time couldn't have understood who I was during the beginning of the relationship, and she saw this version of myself that was still new to me. And at first, yeah, it felt amazing. But as time went on, the amount that this new version of myself had depended on her started to weigh more. I think it's alright for relationships and others to amplify what we are. But if you have no semblance of love, connection, or intimacy before a relationship, your foundation is weak, and when push comes to shove, or things don't feel as enchanting as they were at the start, where will you fall back onto? You see, this girl helped open me to the various qualities I was chasing for so long, and for that I am forever grateful. But the fact that this was much more dependent on her than it was on myself, or it was more of an extension of her love than it was of my own qualities, she started to feel this or notice this. As time went on, we started long distance. I had to learn how to tap into these qualities or this way of life on my own. And in trying to do so, I realized that I still didn't have much left. I would fall back onto old vices, isolation, food, gaming, whatever it is, or other things to get out of shame. Or because when I was not with her or around her, I simply couldn't get things going. Inevitably, I started to change back into the man I was running so far away from. And she saw that in how I treated her, right? The control I desperately tried to cling on to as things failed, and just the overall insecurity and the amount that my persona was dependent on her. But I remember when the relationship finally came to an end, she wanted to stay friends and was adamant about not losing touch. But at the time, I was so staunchly against this because this ending felt like betrayal at the deepest level. But I knew deep down, and see especially in retrospect, that the only person who I betrayed was myself. You see, within a healthy relationship, this kind of foundational altering and dependency of yourself on this other person is likely to contribute to its demise. The sheer weight and pressure that's put on your partner, especially when it's known that, this person is less reliable, or you are less reliable than she may have initially thought, and that everything is kind of emotionally dependent on her. This is not a healthy dynamic. And when I had this love, instead of building it into something solid, I let it depend on her being there to reflect it back to me. She became more of a mirror to me as time went on, and although I thought I was seeing her, I simply saw my own reflection the whole time, from the person she helped me become, back into the person I was. But if you've ever felt like you ruined something good in this way, It's worth asking, what exactly made it good? Because chances are those qualities weren't in the relationship, they were in you. They just weren't exactly yours yet. And so I say these kind of relationships are a blessing because that's what these relationships are really for. The awareness for you to understand what these good things look like when you inhabit them. You know, my case could not last forever because of this unhealthy dynamic that I contributed to, but it showed in part who I needed to become, without needing someone else to hold it together for me. And so, if you found yourself a better person, so to speak, due to a relationship you experienced, although it's heartbreaking and you may still be left with guilt or regret with how fragile your identity was, don't confuse this fragility with inauthenticity. It was real, you just didn't know how to sustain it yet, and that's okay. In fact, it was probably necessary for you to become this amazing catalyst for love in the future who has a more solid foundation. And although this awareness is just the first stage, I think spending every waking moment thinking of these events as a tragedy completely, and confusing what you may have been meant to take out of it, would be even more detrimental. So I hope, for the sake of being the love that you want to see in the world, or you have already seen in yourself and in others, that you took something valuable away from my story. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Please leave your suggestions in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and maybe what you want me to talk about in the future. I wish you all the best.